Data regarding crime on Youngstown's south side shows definite trends for some neighborhoods. Some of those patterns go back decades.
WKBN Community Affairs Director Dee Crawford discusses those patterns with investigative reporter Joe Gorman in today's In-Depth segment.
Joe, as we continue our conversation, I'm interested in what has surprised you as you've been looking through the data as far back as 1990, and also this whole concept of reciprocal. Everything's changing, cycles are moving and recurring.
Well, one of the things, going back to my research, I can't help but think of the pandemic, because when the pandemic happened, it led to a surge of violence across the country, and Youngstown was no different. We went from 58 shootings one year to 98 the next, and then 139. So one of the things I saw as I went through the data and was mapping different things was some of the areas on the south side where there was a lot of violence in the 90s, it sort of went away, but during the pandemic it came back. For example, and some of that is not so much related to poverty, but it could be social media or feuds. For example, I covered a shooting on Kiss Place in late 2020, and I've never covered a shooting there in my whole life. What happened was there were some people there who were hanging out, and they put on Facebook Live where they were at. Well, somebody who didn't like them saw the Facebook Live and went down there and shot the house up. So I think a juvenile got hurt in that shooting, but it just goes to show lately how our violence has been more fluid. Social media has had a lot to do with that during the pandemic, and also a lot of Youngstown's violence is retaliatory. So we'll have spasms of violence where one person will get shot and then somebody will want payback. So they'll take the payback wherever they can get it, and if it's in an out-of-the-way place like Kiss Place, they'll take it. We also had a homicide on the block next to Plum Street, which is in a tract that in the 90s saw a lot of violence, but it's so out of the way that I remember when the detective supervisor got called out, he had to get directions to go there because he had never been there before. So just seeing the violence come back to some of these places, and I'm curious to see if that's just an anomaly or if that's a trend that will continue, because a lot of these places where the violence left, the people who stayed, the neighborhoods are pretty stable. So it's kind of surprising that it would come back.
You and I both are moving almost in the same direction and a parallel, both from the social side of it, from the statistical side of it, and we will continue this conversation hopefully in the future to see what we're finding. Thank you for tuning in, and I want to thank Joe again for sharing, and again, WKBN.com for additional information. I'm Dee Crawford, Community Affairs Director, WKBN.